guys, Angie Chu here, and welcome to Crime and Tea. And today we're going to talk about the case of Elisa Lam. But Angie, that case is so overdone. Well, that's too bad because it's one of my favorites, and probably shouldn't say favorite, because it's one of the true crime stories that plunged me head first into the gray, and so y'all are going to have to hear me talk about it. Elisa Lam. She was born in Vancouver, British Columbia on April 30th, 1991 as Lam Ho Yi. As you know, it's very common for Chinese individuals to have their Chinese-born name and very early on also have an English name. And in this case, her parents chose the name Elisa for their daughter. Her parents, David and Yana Lam, were immigrants from Hong Kong that came to Vancouver. They wound up settling in. They wound up opening a restaurant in Bunbury, which is a suburb of Vancouver, just right outside of the city limits. And soon after opening their restaurant, they gave birth to their daughter, Elisa. Now, by all accounts, Elisa was a very sweet, very kind person. I'm sure you guys have noticed anytime anyone dies, whether they're a celebrity or just normal individual, of course you're going to have that outpouring of support, but it's also common to have those people come out of the grapevine and admit to some of the not so nice things that person has done in their life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's true of all of us. Everyone has skeletons, everyone has private messages, but from everything I've seen on the internet, no one posted like that about Elisa. She seemed just to be an actually sweet and good-hearted person who didn't have any enemies. So after doing well in her adolescence, Elisa applied to and was accepted by the University of British Columbia. And in early January 2013, Elisa decided to take a semester off, just a breather. She's been working hard, and she wanted to go on what she called a West Coast tour. And what this was a trip down the West Coast of the United States. So, of course, we've got Vancouver, which is up here, and you travel down the line, and you hit up, Washington, and Oregon, and California. And if you kept going, you ended up hitting up Mexico, but she didn't want to go that far. So she was going to drift down, the West Coast alone, and that's the big part of the story. She wanted to do it alone. She wanted to be completely in charge of what she did, what she didn't do, when she did it, how she did it. No one else is controlling this West Coast tour except for Elisa, and that had her parents really worried. And, a lot of times in true crime stories, you hear stories of either negligent parents or, overprotective tiger mom parents, and David and Yana Lam were really neither of these. They were just concerned that their 21-year-old daughter is about to go to a foreign country by herself and go to all these major cities by herself, and they were like, please reconsider, maybe take someone with you. But Elisa, she was very steadfast in this. She wanted this to be her trip, done her way, and after some prodding and persuading, eventually David and Yana gave in and said, okay, you're gonna have a great time, you're going to make a bunch of memories from this trip, and they gave her the okay and gave her their blessing. So Elisa went down to San Diego, California on January 22nd, 2013. She traveled by Amtrak to get there, and for most of this trip, she was continuing to travel by Amtrak and also by city buses. And Elisa had a great time upon arriving in San Diego. She went to the San Diego Zoo, and she took a ton of pictures at the zoo and at other places in San Diego. And a big thing Elisa did before she left on this West Coast tour was to make her own blog. So this blog was on a website called Tumblr, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know about, and she called it Nouveau Nouvelle. And this website was meant to share all of her travel experiences, so what she thought about things, pictures she took, and this way her parents and friends and other family members could see not only what she was doing, but also that she was safe. They're living vicariously through her, but they're also learning about her whereabouts. So she posted all of the pictures from the San Diego Zoo on her Tumblr blog. She also mentioned a lot of the food and the fashion she liked. Elisa was really big into fashion, and that's one thing she definitely wanted to take away from this trip. And also she made mention of a potential love interest that she met. Hey! But regardless, Elisa departed from San Diego, California, and traveled to Los Angeles on January 26, 2013. And she arrived there without her love interest. She was still traveling by herself, and she arrived at what's known as the Cecil Hotel in a section of Los Angeles called Skid Row. And I know some of you are probably already groaning, and you know where this is going if you know anything about the Cecil Hotel. So we need to talk about this hotel for a minute. So if the name the Cecil Hotel sounds familiar to you out there, that's because this hotel is infamous. So infamous that it's actually not called the Cecil Hotel anymore. As of 2011, it was renamed as Stay on Main, but up until late 2013, all of its advertisements and pamphlets and commercials and even, the signage on the building itself still said Cecil Hotel. Oops. But whether it goes by the Cecil Hotel or Stay on Main or any other kind of name, the fact remains that this hotel is still located at 640 South Main Street in Los Angeles, California, and it has been a home to a plethora of suicide victims and murderers and serial killers since it first opened its doors. So the first documented case of suicide came 4 years after the Cecil Hotel opened its doors. This was a patron named W.K. Norton in 1931, and he died in one of the Cecil's 600 rooms after taking poison capsules. More suicides continued through the 1930s and 1940s, and in 1944, Dorothy Jean Purcell gave birth to a baby boy in the hotel that she thought was stillborn, and she decided to deal with this by throwing the baby out of the window. Go Cecil Hotel! In 1947, Elizabeth Short, who's also known as the Black Dahlia, was seen drinking at the bar of the Cecil Hotel shortly before her still to this day unsolved murder. And in 1962, Pauline Otten jumped from the 9th floor room that she was staying in after an argument with her estranged husband, and as she fell outside, she landed on pedestrian George Gianni and killed them both instantly. At first, people didn't know what happened. Did they both jump? Did they spontaneously just kind of splat on the ground? But it was eventually realized when they noticed George was wearing his shoes that he was not a jumper. Pauline's husband told them what happened as well, and it's just an unfortunate event. Suicide, jumper, killed a pedestrian. And because of this, people started to dub the Cecil Hotel as the Suicide Hotel. But before long, it was more than just, a suicide haven. This hotel became known for drug use and drug sales and prostitution and violence. Like, people would just go here and, get in fights and beat each other up. And everyone noticed it was kind of odd because, yes, the hotel had the stigma, so some people went to the hotel to do things like drugs because they knew they could get away with it at the hotel. But a lot of people who were in pretty good spirits would go to the hotel and suddenly just be very upset, very angry, and get violent with one another and have fights with one another. And it was just so strange. But because of where the hotel is located, the price is super cheap. And for anyone who's ever traveled to Los Angeles, staying in Los Angeles is not cheap whatsoever. So, despite the reputation of the Cecil Hotel, people still choose to stay here for that killer discount. And as time went on, murders began to happen in this hotel as well. So in 1964, a retired telephone operator named Pigeon Goldie Osgood was found raped, stabbed, and beaten in her hotel room. And to this day, her murder remains unsolved. In the 1980s, serial killer Richard Ramirez, who was known as the Night Stalker, called the Cecil home and used it as a hideout base in between many of the murders that he committed. And in 1991, copycat serial killer Jack Unterweger also stayed at the Cecil as he raped and strangled 3 sex workers. Mr. Unterweger was from Austria. When he was eventually caught as a serial killer, he was expedited back to Austria, and after this, he actually hung himself before he could be officially put in prison. Go Cecil! So whether Elisa knew of, the happenings at the Cecil Hotel or not, the fact remained that this was a really cheap hotel for what was likely to be a really expensive trip for her. And so, if you're not over 21, you obviously already feel the way I'm about to tell you. If you've been past 21, you definitely know this feeling. You feel invincible. Like, you see these things happening and you either think, it's not going to happen to me, or I can handle it. And so with that mentality and with that deal, even if Elisa knew about the history of the Cecil, of course, she's still going to stay there. Like, real talk, my friends and I have continued to stay at a hotel in Illinois that's another murder hotel for several years because of the price and the convenience. And we'll get into that in a couple of episodes, friends. Yay, I'm stupid. So Elisa checks into the Cecil Hotel on January 26, 2013, and she's originally assigned to a hostel-style suite on the 5th floor, so she has 2 roommates that she's splitting this suite with. However, her roommates started to complain that Elisa was exhibiting odd behaviors, and so she was moved to her own private suite, no additional cost, on January 28th, 2013. And to Elisa, this was perfectly fine. She's gone from having to share this suite with, 2 people she didn't know to having her own room for the same cost. Like, win-win. And just to backtrack on a point that I made earlier, this is the only even semi-negative thing I've been able to find about Elisa Lam in all the years that I've researched this case, and in the past few days where I've researched it further to make this episode. It's just been these odd behaviors that were mentioned by the 2 roommates, and nothing online still specifies what the odd behaviors were. It's just, they said she was acting odd, and it's never been disclosed past that what she was doing or why these girls felt they needed, to kick her out and have the suite to themselves. Other than this, nothing bad on Elisa that I can find. But again, Elisa took this in stride, and she continued touring around Los Angeles and blogging routinely, calling her family daily, sometimes multiple times a day, to check in. And her favorite topics were food and fashion. Again, remember, she was really into fashion. She loved going to the museum. She loved going to the shops and seeing all the different things. And since she was, staying basically in Skid Row, she actually took a tour of Skid Row, just kind of walking through, seeing the neighborhood. And one of her blog posts was actually a really emotional blog post where she detailed how bad she felt for the inhabitants of Skid Row. For anyone who doesn't know, Skid Row has the highest organized population of homeless people in the United States, and that's a part of why this hotel is so cheap. But it's just a very impoverished area, and with so many people homeless, that's just kind of the way of life for them. And it's really hard for someone like Elisa, who came from a well-to-do family, to see how these people were living their lives. So on January 31st, 2013, Elisa was to check out of the Cecil Hotel and to continue her journey to Santa Cruz, California. But she never checks out of the hotel. And what's more troubling is she had been calling her parents every day to check in. She also didn't call to check in. So after a bit, her parents are like, she must be really busy. They try to check in on her and they can never get a hold of her. They keep trying to call. There's no activity on her social media profiles. Her friends can't get a hold of her. They end up calling the hotel. The hotel realizes she never checked out, and when they check her room, they see that she is not there. And, all of this is troubling in itself, but especially the fact that this was the day Elisa was supposed to go to another city. and she has just vanished without a word. This is not like her whatsoever. So her parents quickly get on a flight from Vancouver and fly down to Los Angeles to look for their daughter. And while they were in the process of doing this, they also called the LAPD and reported Elisa as missing.
Do you want a legitimate part-time job? And I mean a legitimate part-time job where you literally pick your own hours, when you work, and how much you work? Look no further than VIP Kid. VIP Kid is an ESL company, that's English as a Second Language company, from China. You, as a native English speaker, can work remotely from the privacy of your own home, and you don't need to know Chinese. Really, because if you do, you're not allowed to speak it. You just speak English. You can work hours each day or 1 hour per month. It's completely up to you. Most teachers make around $10 per class, so $20 per hour. I'd show a bit of myself teaching with a really cool setup, but I normally teach without makeup and without pants, so I can't really do that. But to get started, go to bit.ly.com/VIPKidChew. Again, that's bit.ly.com/VIPKidChew. No pants.
So the LAPD were actually very quick to jump on this case and realize this behavior is completely out of the norm for Elisa Lam. So they do everything in their power to find Elisa and to help David and Yina Lam find where their daughter is. The problem is they were very limited in what they could do. So, they check the main rooms of the hotel, like the gym and everything. They check Elisa's room thoroughly. They check stairwells. They, go up, pop up on the roof with search dogs and look around. They're sniffing out all this stuff. But there's some rooms that they can go in, but most that they cannot. Any room that is currently occupied by a tenant, they cannot enter because there is no probable cause to believe that a crime had taken place at this time. And so they had no access to most of the rooms to look and see if someone was hiding Elisa or hiding evidence in one of the rooms. And the LAPD also questioned the staff of the Hotel Cecil just to see what was going on. And, staff all reported the same thing. They remembered seeing Elisa around and she was always alone. So she wasn't with any of the roommates that she had in the beginning or anyone she had met after that. There was no potential love interest from San Diego walking around with her. Elisa was just kind of a lone wolf on this trip. And she seemed in good spirits, but she was always alone. Just kind of a wandering free spirit exploring a new city. They also interviewed a woman by the name of Katie Orphan, who owned the bookstore next door to the Cecil Hotel. And she actually remembered seeing Elisa on the morning of January 31st, which was the day she was supposed to check out of the hotel. Elisa came into her store. Again, she was alone, but she was described by Katie as being outgoing, very lively, very friendly. Elisa was doing some shopping in there for books to bring back to her family and friends, and she was talking with Katie of what books Katie recommended. She was also looking for lighter weight, thinner books so that it wouldn't weigh down her bags. And, eventually Elisa made her purchases, bid Katie adieu, and went off on her way. There was nothing unusual about this entire encounter. Elisa's original roommates from the Cecil Hotel were also interviewed, of course, but other than reiterating she had some odd behaviors, nothing else could, be found about Elisa. There was nothing else about the situation that really stood out. It was like Elisa just vanished into the night. Literally. So on February 6th, exactly 1 week after Elisa went missing, the LAPD decided they really needed to open up this case to a larger audience. So they start passing out flyers en masse all around Skid Row and Los Angeles and even surrounding counties and cities. They also put Elisa's picture in like a missing flyer advertisement on all of their social media, and they advise people to share it. They also have, officers up in Vancouver do the same thing in case maybe Elisa just wound up back there. Santa Cruz had a word out, San Diego had a word out, and they were hoping someone would spot Elisa with all of this word out, with her picture going everywhere. And it did the duty of bringing this more onto a national aspect at this point. Like, a lot of news stations, even across the country, were reporting the case of, the missing college student from Canada who had gone missing from the Cecil Hotel. And even with the infamous reputation of the Cecil Hotel, that's not what propelled this case into, this kind of intense scrutiny it became. That happened another week later on February 15th, 2013. So on that day, on February 15th, Elisa had been missing for 16 days, and everyone, her parents, her family, the LAPD, the Cecil staff were all kind of at their wits' end of what happened to this girl. So the LAPD decided to play their trump card. They had a recording of the last known sighting and whereabout of Elisa. They hadn't released up until this point, and they figured it was time to do so. And that video, of course, is the elevator video. So they posted footage of this video of Elisa in the elevator on their YouTube channel, and people went crazy about this video. So this footage was taken from inside one of the Cecil Hotel's elevators on the wee morning hours of February 1st, 2013. Remember, Elisa was already supposed to have checked out of the hotel at this point. She hadn't checked out of the hotel, and she had not contacted her parents. But here she was in an elevator acting quite bizarre. Now, some people have theorized that a paranormal phenomenon was at play, while others speculate that Elisa was being chased or taunted by someone unseen from outside of the elevator. Of course, many people realize this is a college student. They're wondering if she's on some kind of party drug like ecstasy, or if she mixed something and that's what's going on. But unfortunately, by this point, one of Elisa's dark secrets had come out. So Elisa had struggled with bipolar disorder for a lot of her adolescence and young adulthood, and her family and Elisa all kept this a secret. She was on medication. It was pretty much controlled, but the longer she was missing, the more it started coming out. Maybe something happened to her because of her bipolar disorder. And so a lot of people seeing this elevator video also theorized that she was having a mental break. So regardless of what the cause was of Elisa's behavior in this video, everyone could agree on one thing: the video is unsettling. When you ask people, how does this video make you feel, pretty much everyone across the board says the video is very unsettling to watch. It makes some people get goosebumps. It makes some people nauseous. Some people have cried. Many people were not able to finish the video because of how freaked out they got. And, the more this video got around, people were sharing, the YouTube link. Also in China, people got on Weibo and reposted the picture on Weibo and were sharing it on Weibo. So this video went viral. Like, it's hard to find someone who does not even have, the slightest memory of seeing this video somewhere on the news or on social media, because it was everywhere. Now, I could sit here and describe to you step by step what happens in the video, but that would be robbing you guys of the chance to form your own conclusions. I have some conclusions that I'll discuss later in this video, but it's important for everyone to have their own conclusion from this for the rest of this very strange case. Keep in mind, this video is unsettling to watch. There's nothing graphic or anything like that. Just, you'll understand. I'm going to go ahead and play it in its entirety, and good luck.
murder, romance, hippies, and kidnappings. These are the elements that unfold in author Angela Nicole Chu's mystery thriller novel series, The Belle-Homme Chronicles. Featuring the eccentric Washington family, this series follows husband and wife tag team Nathalian and Blythe Washington, Nathalian's brother Edwin, and their slew of family members in a paranormal whodunit. In a book series where no one is a true good guy, the Washingtons have many of their own secrets to hide, and these secrets continue to grow and grow as the family comes closer and closer to exposure. Check out the Belle-Homme Chronicles wherever books are sold. This series is advised for audiences 16 and older. Happy reading!
So is it paranormal? Is it a psychotic break? Is it a party-induced rage? Is she unfortunately having a mental breakdown? Is she running from a predator and she's the prey? Like, literally, no one knows. All we have is this video of her doing that in an elevator. And that's led to even more theories like, she was playing the elevator game, which I break down in another video. You can see the link down here. Or, even that she was teleported away. And because of all of these theories, running wild, it just made even more confusion in the public light. All we know is that these are the last recorded moments of Elisa Lam. So while all this is going on, for about a week, residents of the Cecil Hotel started complaining about the water. And they were complaining that the water had a fun taste. It had kind of a sweet taste to it. People also said the water was coming out discolored. Some people said it was a slight brownish discoloration. Some people said it was almost black. And despite numerous people stating this, not a lot was done. Remember, they are in Skid Row. This is not a very nice area of town. So the response by a lot of staff and even a lot of people staying here were, we're just in an area where the water sucks. Like, what do you expect? And that's literally what staff told people. Like, you're not going to be getting grade A water when you're staying at the Cecil Hotel. Like, sorry. And so people would either suck it up and use the water anyway, or they would use bottled water. But, the complaints started coming more and more and more frequently over the week. And by the time the elevator video was released, there were so many complaints coming in that staff was like, we gotta do something. So they decided to investigate, mainly to be able to tell people, look, we looked into it, nothing was wrong, get over it, our water just really sucks. So they sent one of their maintenance employees, Santiago Lopez, to go investigate the water situation on the roof. Now, Santiago had worked for the Cecil Hotel for 3 years, and like most of the staff, he also assumed that the water just sucked because of the location, but he decided to do his job anyway, and on February 19th, he took an elevator to the 15th floor and then took the staircase up the rest of the way to the roof. Once he was there, he turned off the rooftop alarm, and then he ascended onto the platform where the hotel's 4 large water tanks sit. Now, these are some huge tanks. They're each 1,000-gallon tanks, and there's a 20-pound steel lid that's holding each of them down. There are no ladders inside or outside of the tank, so Santiago actually had to bring his own maintenance ladder up to get to the top of the tank. This is important. These tanks are 8 feet tall. There's not an easy way for a normal-sized human, unless you're like an NBA player, to reach the top of the tank. So Santiago checks out 2 of the tanks and he finds nothing, and he's like, okay, I'm halfway done, let me finish the rest of these so that I can go get some lunch and tell people that nothing is going on. So he gets to the 3rd tank and he climbs his way up and he unscrews a little hatch and looks down inside, and he sees the naked body of an Asian woman floating about a foot below the surface, staring directly at him. So after a little freak out, Santiago alerts the hotel management, who then calls in the LAPD, who then calls in the fire department. And the fire department has to drain the tank completely and then cut it completely open. This had to happen because the maintenance hatch was too small to accommodate all of the equipment that was needed to safely remove the woman's body without disturbing it further. Also inside the tank were the woman's clothing, a watch, and a room key. And so this is all retrieved as well, and the coroner quickly determines that this is the body of missing 21-year-old student Elisa Lam. On February 21st, 2013, 2 days later, the Los Angeles coroner revealed Elisa's cause of death to be accidental drowning with bipolar disorder as a significant factor. Her body had been coated in a sand-like particulate, and this same particulate was also found on her clothing that was floating around her in the tank. And these articles of clothing were the same articles of clothing that she was wearing in the elevator video. After 2 weeks in the tank, Elisa's body had moderately decomposed and bloated. Her skin had a greenish tint to it when she was discovered, and there was some marbling and skin separation present on, different areas of her body, especially on her stomach. The autopsy and rape kit found no evidence of any kind of physical or sexual trauma. Suicide was also ruled out, and toxicology revealed very little alcohol in her system when she died. She had a 0.2 blood alcohol content, so nothing really in there. And she had no evidence of party drugs. Although toxicology also revealed traces of Wellbutrin, Lamictal, Seroquel, and Effexor in her system, and these were the 4 medicines that Elisa regularly took to manage her bipolar disorder. Now, these medicines were normally in her system, so, a normal day this wouldn't be anything to write home about, but the weird thing was that there were trace amounts of these in her system. So let's think. Remember the odd behavior that was reported by Elisa's roommates that was completely out of character for her. Remember the odd mannerisms she was exhibiting in the elevator. If Elisa was taking her medicine like she should have been, there should have been a lot more than just traces of it in her system. Elisa, for whatever reason, had stopped taking her medicine a few days before she passed away. And, going cold turkey off these meds, especially 4 meds, would mess up anyone, but especially if you're using these to control your bipolar disorder and you all of a sudden stop taking them, that's really going to affect what's going on in your brain. So these results lead credence to the theory that Elisa Lam's death was caused due to a psychological breakdown due to the lack of medicine in her system. And nothing suggests that Elisa intended to wean herself off of these medicines, so it definitely seems like she did stop cold turkey. And this is why the coroner added the, bipolar disorder as a significant factor clause to her drowning diagnosis. But still, what makes this case so odd isn't the elevator, it isn't the lack of drugs in her system, it's how did Elisa get into the tank? Let's revisit exactly what you have to do to get into a water tank at the Cecil Hotel. So remember that employee Santiago Lopez had to take an elevator to the 15th floor of the Cecil Hotel, and then he had to climb the fire staircase the remainder of the way to the roof. After that, he had to deactivate the alarm and use his own ladders to get to the top of the water tanks. And these tanks are also secured on top by a large steel lid, and this lid was placed on the top of Elisa's tank as it normally was. So the lid was not askew, it wasn't ajar, it was sat on and looked completely normal. So the first method of preventing entrance into the roof is the alarm, and if the alarm is not disabled first, it sets off a giant loud noise to the 15th, the 14th, and the first floor. So if Elisa had triggered this alarm, a lot of people would have heard it. And the only way to deactivate it is to have one of the employees, key codes. So she would have had to have a key code to get there. Now, if she did manage to get past the alarm, she would have had to climb the fire ladder the rest of the way onto the roof. And from here, she would have had to climb up on the platform, and then she would have had to use a ladder from somewhere to get to the top of the 8-foot tall tank. And then while she's bouncing on that ladder at the top of the 8-foot tall tank, she's got to push this heavy steel lid, away enough to fit a grown woman's body into it. And then she somehow, while hanging, got to swing it back so that it closes back up. And she would have had to close it before she fell into the tank, because where the water level was, it was only 3/4 of the way full. There was no way in arm's reach for her to be able to reach up to the top of that tank. So just none of this makes sense, and that's why this case has continued to perplex and stay on the mind of me and other true crime enthusiasts for the 7 years since this first happened. Because this is where the case ends, ladies and gentlemen. There is no further resolution from this. There has never been a full explanation of how Elisa got in the tank, what happened that night, why she wasn't on her meds, what she was doing in that elevator. And this is why, far-fetched theories like paranormal activity with an elevator game and teleportation from the elevator into the water tank are still prevalent and not shot down immediately, because this case is just so off the wall that anything really makes sense. The most likely theory, of course, is Elisa had some kind of a mental breakdown and she managed, maybe the alarm wasn't set that night. Maybe a ladder was left up there. Maybe, she managed to just flip the lid up enough to easily fall in and fell back up. And, the sanest and most prevalent theory is that it was an accidental drowning from her mental breakdown, and that's what the coroner said as well. But still, we probably will never know how she got in that tank. And also adding to the chill factor, Elisa's blog, Nouveau Nouvelle, continued to update for about 6 months after her death. So, of course, it's pretty easy these days when you have any kind of social media site to pre-schedule posts, and especially when you're going to be doing a lot of busy things, it's common to pre-schedule. I do it all the time. So, the obvious answer is Elisa had pre-scheduled, these posts, and they routinely went up for the next 6 months. But of course, this is still really disturbing for the friends and family who are following that blog to all of a sudden see there's a new post by Elisa that's come up on the blog. On top of this, there was the fact that Elisa's phone was never discovered. It's believed to have been stolen shortly before her death, shortly before she got in that tank. But again, we don't know what happened to the phone. And she had a login to the website on that phone. So no one else has the login. No one can access the Tumblr to see if she had pre-scheduled the broadcast or not. And so that leaves us to wonder, did Elisa pre-schedule these posts before her untimely demise and they're just still going up over time? Is there someone who knows something about the case who's basically leaving clues on the blog, either to taunt or to try to help people figure out what happened to Elisa? Or is Elisa sending us her own messages from a different realm? And that is the story of Elisa Lam. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Crime NT. This has been the Angie Chu. Tune in next week for another exciting episode. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you know anytime there is a new video going up. If you are on YouTube, if you're listening to this on, Spotify or Google Play or iTunes, be sure to subscribe to your podcast as well so that you get those weekly podcast updates. And of course, be sure to check out Patreon to support me. I do spend a lot of time each week to do all the research for this, cited my sources. So definitely help out, support. Feel free to leave recommendations on what other cases you would like to hear. And I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.